Today's episode of the Energy Newsbeat podcast is brought to you by Enverus. The energy industry faces massive challenges every day, and the events over the last 2 years have caused huge disruptions like never before. Companies in the energy industry need actionable intelligence and a single source of truth that brings all the data together. Enverus is the energy specialized technology partner that provides intelligent connections for a global energy ecosystem. Only Enverus has the analytics, people, experience, and industry scope to connect the right data and information in the right way to discover missed opportunities and deliver fast outcomes. Find out more at Enverus.com. That's ENVERUS.com.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody to today's podcast, the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. Not only do we have a great day today, we've got a special guest from Finland. And I mean, this is kind of fun when we're sitting here talking about the energy transition. We have Tom Jensen, and he is the CEO of FREYR Battery Technology. And there's a ton of stuff going on there. Thank you, Tom, very much for stopping by the podcast.
Stu, thank you very much. And while I do appreciate our Finnish friends, right, I have to say that I am Norwegian. But we also do have plants in Finland, so it's in the general vicinity. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so are you in Finland or Norway?
I am in Norway. I am Norwegian. Don't hold that against me. But we do have plans to build battery facilities both in Norway and in Finland, which are neighboring countries in Scandinavia. And then Northvolt, which was the inspiration for FREYR back in the day. They are Swedish, so they are sort of in between. And as Norwegians, we tend to think that if the Swedes can do it, we can do it a little bit better.
I love it. Now, see, I'm from Texas and Oklahoma, so I speak funny. So, we may have a translator issue here going on. But I'll tell you what's kind of cool is when you sit back and take a look, I've been nosing around on your stuff, and you're now also possibly expanding into the U.S., and you've got over 30 gigawatt Gigafactory coming into Norway. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Stu, it's true. We're coming to a theater near you quite soon. We did announce that not so long ago, and people should be on the lookout because we are getting very ready to announce where we're going to go. So we, in the US, just to sort of take a quick step back. So we started our journey in Norway back in 2018. Didn't really know anything about batteries, but we knew a lot about energy, and we knew a lot about producing and transforming energy to useful products. As you might know, Stu, Norway is an energy nation. Our industrial heritage started 130 years ago, when we started to harness hydropower. We turned that into artificial fertilizer. We turned that into aluminium. We turned that into large surplus of green, low-cost electricity, which have generated a large energy-intensive and process-intensive industrial base in Norway. That industrial acumen, if you like, was useful when we struck gold, meaning we found oil and gas on the Norwegian continental shelf. So Norway is one of those countries that have been above average fortunate from the good Lord, or wherever we, think that we got our good fortunes from. And energy is something that has always kind of fell down in our lap, so to speak. So we built then a oil and gas industry in Norway, probably one of the best oil and gas industries in the world, more than 100 oil and gas platforms out in the North Sea. And it's that heritage, Stu, that we decided to build a battery company on, because we do believe that the energy transition, decarbonizing transportation, which really is a transition over to electric vehicles, but also changing the energy system at large, which means no more coal-fired power, no more gas-fired power, but all solar, all wind, all hydro, all renewable energy. If we're going that direction, which fundamentally we need to do, if we're going to stay reasonably within climate boundaries, there needs to be a ton of batteries, not only for the electric vehicles, but also for balancing out solar and wind, because the sun shines when it shines, and the wind blows when it blows. And what do you do when it doesn't? Then you store that energy in batteries, and then you provide peak shaving services to grids that will be congested with too much energy. So you basically store that energy for later use. So that's kind of the two sides of the same coin. Now, we were fortunate enough to pick up some interest from US back in 2020, after we had done a private placement in the over-the-counter market in Norway. That led us into a SPAC process with a US-listed company on the New York Stock Exchange. They called me up one day and they said, "Do you want to go public on the New York Stock Exchange?" And I said, "Nope, I do not." And then they said, "Well, what if there is $1 billion involved?" And then I said, "Okay, why didn't you start with that?" So then we started the process very fast, and we ended up basically going public on the New York Stock Exchange on July 8th last year. And I can tell you, Stu, that is not something you do every day. When you stand up on that balcony and you press that green button and you hear that ding, 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 that is something else. Now, on a serious note, we have 3 core principles in what we do. It's speed, scale, and sustainability. So everything we do is linked to these 3 S's, if you like. We're also very preoccupied with the 4th S, which is our shareholders. But, you know, from a business perspective, these 3 things is what matters. So 8 days after we went public, we made our first investment decision. In June this year, we made our first Gigafactory investment decision, which was Giga Arctic, which is named. That's a 29 gigawatt hour facility that we're building in northern Norway. The blueprints for that facility is what we're now replicating in the United States, but it's going to be slightly bigger because we're going to implement even better machinery in the Giga America facility. So that is probably going to be at least 35 gigawatt hours, but more news to come, so stay tuned. And then we have secured land in Finland, as I mentioned, where we're also intending to build battery facilities. And then we have just announced that we also secured a license for a cathode technology, which is a big component going into batteries. Cathodes is what it's called.
Yes.
So we're going upstream from battery production. We're going downstream from battery production into modules and packs and containers for energy storage solutions. So we are doing a lot, Stu, and we want to be, you know, a champion in the clean energy battery revolution. This is happening in front of our eyes. It's moving a lot faster than most people think. And we feel that we are very much in a sweet spot, but also quite humble to the task because it's quite hard and quite challenging and extremely capital intensive to do all of this stuff.
I'll tell you what, Tom, you just nailed my head spinning because I need about 16 hours with you and I know we're limited on time, but you've got A, excitement, B, financial interest, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act and tax incentives. But there is a ton of obstacles you've got to overcome. The U.S. grid is in not that good a shape and being updated. And so when you're looking at, we've got a lot of wind and solar, but as soon as you put those on there, the storage is needed. But it is really, if the storage is over here in this section, and then you have to have the grid operators, you know, flip everything around, that is confusing as all get out. So your storage story is fantastic, but your battery solutions, you've got some serious headway that you're making and you still have to go. How is all that going to happen?
Well, so you need to put one foot in front of the other and repeat the motion multiple times at accelerating pace. So that's kind of how we look at it. Now, this is industry one-on-one. I mean, so when we built up the organization in FREYR, we took in seasoned veterans from the oil and gas and aluminium industry. People who have, as we say in Norway, been out a winter's night before, built large, you know, oil and gas platforms, built large aluminium facilities, have been in the business of producing and exporting energy and energy-related products all their lives. Then we complemented that with battery expertise, a large part from Asia, but also battery experts from parts of Europe and the United States. We found a US-based technology, 24M Technologies, which is a spin-off from MIT that, you know, has been under development since 2010. And that technology is a massive improvement over conventional battery production. So we can build at smaller space with much less capex, using less energy and using less people, but using the same raw materials that have already been scaled for the conventional lithium-ion battery technology. So
Wow.
we're getting the benefit of a dramatically improved production setup, both design of the battery as well as the production process. And that is why we are confident that we can build a lot of facilities reasonably fast in multiple jurisdictions and deliver an increasing amount of long-lasting, low-cost, highly sustainable battery solutions to an increasing number of market verticals. So we're super excited about it, but this is, a lot of work and a lot of disciplines and a lot of management and a lot of swim lanes, as we call them. But when you built oil and gas platforms in the North Sea, where sometimes wave heights are 20 meters, you kind of have been out in rough terrain, literally speaking, before. So we just do one thing at a time, but we do it at an accelerating pace.
Right.
And, that's why we think that we're onto, a industrial what we like to call an industrial replication engine. Right. So we'd like to be able to replicate and improve constantly, because the world is going to need hundreds of these gigafactories around the world to basically be able to provide stable energy supply and, of course, to decarbonize transportation. Now, back to the US, which you mentioned, I agree that your grid, generally speaking, is in need of some improvement. But the good news about energy storage systems is that they can provide that improvement without massive infrastructure investment. So you can actually think about decentralized, democratized energy generation based on renewable energy is fundamentally very feasible across all continental United States. And Stanford did a study on using solar and wind and 4-hour lithium-ion battery storage in either 4 large or 9 smaller, let's call it, compartments of the US, which shows that you by 2050 can go 100% renewable without any blackouts by using solar, wind, and lithium-ion batteries with 4-hour storage. So, and this is not pipe dream. It's not technology that needs to be invented. It's already here. It's only a matter of scaling it and replicating it and doing it over and over, many, many places. And the opportunity couldn't be greater. So you're in for an energy transformation in your country that I don't think you've ever seen. And I think, the Inflation Reduction Act, to sort of touch upon that as well, is something that, will accelerate that quite a lot. But at the end of the day, you need to have an economic proposition that, stands on its own 2 feet. And therefore, you need a robust technology that has low capex, low opex, high regularity, high yield, and well-performing, high-performing batteries. And then we're adding on top of that the decarbonization aspect, not only to using renewable energy in producing the batteries, but also localizing cathode and anodes and electrolytes and everything else that goes into a battery, and processing those materials as well with renewable energy. So then it becomes this closed loop, if you like, that you are using renewable energy to produce a product that unlocks more renewable energy. And that's when we get into a world which is fully decarbonized. And then we can charge all of these electric vehicles, the Rivians, the Teslas, the Fords, the GMs of this world, with renewable energy, and batteries produced with renewable energy.
I am, Tom, I'm sorry, I get excited about technology and what you're doing, but you've also, you've talked about you kind of alluded on about 3 or 4 things. Your new technology for the batteries. The supply chain's gone horrible. And if you take a look at just the old lithium ion batteries, correct me if I'm wrong, I am from Texas, so, I talk funny and all that. But when we sit back and take a look, the rare earth minerals in a supply chain are only in a few areas around the world. And what are your new characteristics of your battery, and how can you help? 2 things, because your job market, bringing your factories to the US is a lot of jobs. The second piece of that is your supply chain. And I think I've read a bunch that you've already addressed that, but everybody I've talked to, and it would be great to hear how you've got that fixed a little bit.
Yeah. So our CFO, he puts it this way: lithium is like capital. It's everywhere. You just have to know where to get it. Now, so lithium is, in the periodic table, element number 3, right? So it's abundant everywhere. Of course, there are deposits of lithium that has been discovered and that are in production, that are the easiest, if you like, reservoirs of lithium to develop. And these you find, as you point out, in South America and Chile, in Australia, and in places that aren't necessarily very close. So then, if you do the analogy to the oil and gas sector, we found the large elephants right first, the ones that were huge, easy to spot on seismic. And then we start to find, the smaller and smaller deposits, but still conventional. And then we start to think about fracking and cracking and all of that stuff. And then we found the Permian Basin and all of that, which, by the way, now is one of the highest producing areas in the world, right? So, and now, of course, fast forward to today, the hunt for lithium is on, and there are many, many different ways in which you can extract lithium. You can look at lithium concentration in thermal wells, for instance, right? You can look at lithium concentration in the brine, or in the Rhine, I should say, in Germany. So the going mantra is get some brine from the Rhine, right? So now
but in the Rhine almost dry.
Yeah. So if I'm taking it back to our own challenges, of course, I don't want to sound coy or simplistic about this, because there is nothing about this that is simple. We need about 13 different inputs, metals, minerals, and different elements going into our battery. We have secured what we need for the initial years of production. And then we're looking into multiple additional options to secure metals and minerals for the longer term, and also to potentially take equity stakes in that part of the value chain to further drive down cost, and also to use renewable energy to produce it. And there is nothing that we have seen that sort of indicates that we won't be able to deliver on this. But it does require a wide variety of projects. It does require a deep partnership-based approach. And we are partnering with the best and the brightest in this space, including a number of American companies. And again, we have a US-based technology, and the more we can process the cathode materials, the anode materials, the lithium carbonate, the lithium hydroxide, the electrolyte that needs to go into these batteries, the more we can process all of that in the US for US-produced batteries, for US decarbonization, the better it is. And that's really the focus we have. And that's the focus we have anywhere, to be frank, right? I mean, batteries are critical energy infrastructure. This is about security of energy supply. And therefore, you cannot rely on too large of a fraction of that energy supply to come from abroad. So therefore, the US will drive towards being self-sufficient to an as large extent as possible, to an as large degree as possible across the entire value chain. And that is what you will see all over the world. Now, there will be probably temporary bottlenecks where lithium will have to be imported from South America, or imported from Australia, or from other places where it's still sort of the easiest kind of lithium to mine. But when you throw the brain power of the US and the capital market of the US at an opportunity like this, you will be amazed how quickly things turn around. So we are quite optimistic in this regard. And we're, of course, big customers of these guys as well. So we could put some big purchase orders on the table, and that has a tendency to drive development and production forward.
You're hitting all of the buttons, because I believe that the lowest cost kilowatt per hour needs to be delivered to consumers to elevate people out of poverty. And I believe that there's so many people around the world that are still not have access to renewable, as far as consistent energy and things. And Finland and Norway, with their natural gas, just like you said, out of the North Sea, and exporting energy to your local hydro energy, you're exporting electricity as a major source to help the rest of the EU in this energy crisis. And didn't Finland I believe, or Norway, they were shutting down their oil and gas fields, and now they restarted them because of the geopolitical stuff and everything else, if I remember that correctly.
Well,
Does
so
that
Norway
help?
has well, so
Sorry.
Norway has definitely, turned the valves on our gas field to the max, right?
Yes.
To basically export as much as possible of the gas we have, and we are by now the by far the largest provider of gas to Europe, because of course the Russian gas is less than stable these days, to put it mildly. So, but it's true also that the hydroelectric power that Norway has enjoyed surplus of for many, many decades is now also in deep, deep supply in Europe, which in a way also triggers the need to develop more renewable energy in Norway, which will be offshore wind predominantly, but also select onshore wind developments, right? However contentious that is. Now, back to sort of your point on access to renewable energy and what that ultimately will do to the average consumer, let's put it that way. Think about the word renewable, Stu.
Right.
The word renewable means that it's kind of perpetual. So, and solar energy, as opposed to natural gas, is free. You don't have to pay anything for the marginal unit of solar energy produced, because there is no feedstock cost involved. Whereas with gas, you actually do have that. So the planet is hit with some 10,000 times more solar energy per day than what we need. And there's probably 20 to 30 times more wind energy that we can harness than what humanity really needs at any given point. And when the wind is blowing, there is no meter running anywhere. And when the sun is shining, there is no, cost clicking away just because of that sun. Of course, you need to build facilities. You need to build these large solar parks, and you need to operate them, and you need to have some people to do maintenance, etc. But as you know, every time you double capacity of something, costs drop by a factor of something. And if you double them many enough times, the cost of energy will be very, very low. So as long as we keep building more and more renewable energy, and we balance that out with energy storage applications, cheap renewable energy is coming to every theater near you. And that's, inevitable, in my opinion. It's only a matter of time, because it makes economic sense. Because think about it, solar energy and wind energy, the feedstock is free. People need to get this into their minds. It is a free feedstock. And then it's only a matter of how expensive is the stuff we put around it. And already today, we can put up solar plus storage, which is cheaper than the lowest cost combustion or combined cycle gas turbine. That can happen today in many, many parts of the US, and particularly in the area that you're in. So I think, it's, if you believe in climate change or not, and if you're an advocate for it or not, what you should believe in is economic return. And lower cost of energy is something everyone should be preoccupied with. And renewable energy is on the path to that, and batteries play the core catalytic role in unlocking that at a large enough level.
Tom, for the last little segment here, the energy crisis in the world, because the U.S. is going to have the same energy crisis. We have a lack of supply in the Northeast because of the lack of pipelines to get natural gas up there, and we're having to import LNG, and we don't have the battery storage like you talked about as well. Do you think if Germany had your battery solutions online, they would not be as in big of a pickle right now with the Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, and Russia's geopolitical disaster they've caused? Again, I'm just throwing that out as a hypothetical.
Yeah, so I think, for the world to go fully electric, let's put it that way, we need to triple electricity production globally. Now, if you need to triple electricity production globally, and that electricity needs to be renewable, to, not, go against climate change boundaries, we need to 20-fold wind and solar installations.
Wow.
And to do that, you need to probably 200-fold or more the amount of storage installations we have on the ground. Some people think it might be more than 1,000 times. Now, if you then start to look at that, either globally or regionally, everywhere needs to build more renewable energy. And everywhere you do that, you will benefit from having storage in some way, shape, or form. So it is not one answer to that question, Stu. The world needs to build more solar, more wind, and more storage. And it needs to happen on steroids, faster than most people realize. But the good news is the technology is there. We have built these systems before. It's not like as if something magical needs to happen. We know how to build solar parks. We know how to build wind parks. We know how to improve technology over time. We know how to build battery storage solutions. And all of this is now gearing up in a significant way. And as long as the capital markets and the governments around the world realize the opportunity and provide capital either through private means, public markets, and or government grants and incentives like the Inflation Reduction Act, we can fix this problem. It's a tangible problem. It's a problem that can be broken down in many, many projects, and it needs to happen all over the world. But that's what the world needs to do the next 15 to 20 years. A lot of renewable energy and a lot of battery storage. That's why we're excited to be in this business, biased as we are.
We only have about a few more minutes here, but I keep dragging that out a little bit because I'm enjoying this conversation. But when you sit back and take a look, the FREYR has been great on the supply chains, on trying to figure out this. Have you thought about recycling of your batteries and a whole business model for that? Because I haven't seen any, and I know it's probably there, but everybody that is naysayers on the wind and the renewable and those things are saying batteries cannot be recycled yet. Is that in your business plans coming around the future? Because when you have a gigafactory, you're going to need to recycle those bad dogs.
That's right, Stu. So yes, I mean, we come from a country where recycling is kind of part of our DNA in everything we do. Now, two things I'd like to say in this, right? So one is the materials that you get from scrap batteries, right? So when you're producing batteries in the facility, you have a certain scrap rate. Of course, we're working very hard to minimize that scrap rate, but that is materials that we can reuse. So we need, let's call it internal recycling or process recycling facilities. All of that is being worked up as part of the Gigafactory. Then, of course, we are designing batteries that we intend to last for 20 years. And then after 20 years, they become viable for recycling. And we actually have a technology, again, 24M Technologies out of Boston, which renders itself much more easily to recycling than conventional battery solutions.
Right.
So yes, battery recycling and material recycling from end-of-life batteries is a big part of the equation for us. Right. There will be gradually, especially in Norway, since we were the country to start adopting electric vehicles first, this is the area where a reasonable amount of end-of-life batteries will be available for recycling. So the world's first large-scale recycling facility for end-of-life batteries are actually located 120 kilometers from where I'm sitting right now. So yes, recycling is a big part of the equation. I don't want people to get lost in how big of a fraction this is going to be as a raw material supply source for battery production in the near term, because the growth in battery production is going to go very, very fast, and therefore we're going to need a lot of new materials going into it. Back to the supply chain issue you just pointed to. But when we get up to a steady state production and we have stable supply of batteries, let's say around 20,000 gigawatt hours per annum, I think it's possible to envisage that 80% plus of the raw materials going into that comes from recycled batteries. But that also means that you need 20% of 20,000 gigawatt hours of batteries in new materials every year. and that is 4 times more what the world is supplying today. But it's not more than that. But of course, there's going to be some temporary challenges in this regard.
Yeah.
But recycling is going to be absolutely core in the not so distant future. But in the meantime, we need to scale up those supply chains. You're spot on.
Real quick, as a guy taking a look at all kinds of energy, you've hit all my hot buttons on a lot of things. And as an investor taking a look, you've got your, I believe your investor relations person in Houston, which is, really pretty cool as well too. But you're hitting all those you're hitting all those things. And so investors taking a look at FREYR have got to think that as a CEO, you have taken a long look at almost every lane or swim lane, as you say. I'm very pleased with what I'm hearing on all these things, especially as a potential investor looking at FREYR. We're just about out of time. Tom, what's coming around the corner for you, A, personally, and B, for FREYR?
Well, as I mentioned, we are coming to a theater near you. So I guess
I love that line, Tom. That is a great
that
line.
means me personally as well as FREYR. So we'd like to think upon ourselves as an industrial scaling partner of choice. We believe in partnerships. We cannot succeed in any market, including the American one, without deep local partners. That's why we're super excited about the announcement that will come in the not so distant future. We are releasing our our third quarter earnings numbers on the 14th of November. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for lots of more exciting stuff coming from us. We are running on all cylinders. We have been quite, I would say, diligent in the way we have approached things, and so far that has kind of paid off reasonably. We are Norwegian, so even though thousands of years ago we were Vikings and raping and pillaging the world, we are now, I think, strong custodians of natural resources. We are focused on sustainable development. We are focused on fair and equitable sharing of the value we create, and I think that's something that will resonate and is resonating with a number of stakeholders worldwide. And next big thing, back to your question, is US-centric, Stu. So stay tuned.
Hey, thank you for your time, Tom. And we will send out all your contact information for FREYR and the investing information and everything else. Thank you for stopping by.